Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. We're going to continue our Zera Shimshon class with the permission of Zera Hashem. We are learning Zera Shimshon almost one entire year. We're only up to Parashat Nitzavim. Today we're going to do Derush Bet Be'ezrat Hashem. As a reminder, if you want a copy of our Sefer that we managed to put together with Hashem's help, many unique things in this book that you'll never find anywhere else. It's an unbelievable take on the stories of the Gemara Masechet Gitin. Please shoot me an email at my name, yosefzayrov@gmail.com. I'll be glad to arrange a copy for you. And with that said, we can continue here. Also, as a gauge, if you want to see if you're interested in the material or not, we do have a series of lectures where we're learning the Sefer. We're learning the book once a week on the same channel, same YouTube channel, B'yachad. Over there, you can check over there, called Chatzai Yosef, where we talk about all the deep things that are written over there. Anyway, says Zera Shimshon, Im yeni dachacha b'ktzei hashamayim misham mikabezcha Adonai Elohecha u'misham yikachecha. The pasuk says, Devarim 34, chapter 30, verse 4. If you will be pushed to one edge of the heavens, from there God will gather you, and from there God will take you and bring you back. It's a prophecy about the future, the days of the redemption, that we're still waiting so patiently, that Hashem will bring us all back to the holy place and reveal His greatness to the world there, in the Holy Land. But the Zera Shimshon has a question on this verse. He says, we have to be precise over here. Shetevat misham meyuteret. The word misham, from there, is extra in the verse. If you look at the verse, it says over here, from there Hashem will take you. From there, from the place. He's saying, I don't need the word misham, from there, from wherever you are. It's obvious. It would have been enough to say the same sentence without the word misham, from there. The same would have been understood. You could have just written it as, if you will be pushed to the edge of the heavens, Hashem will gather you. It's understandable. What's the word misham? Why does the verse have to say two types of taking? Doubling the language. First it says, Misham mikabetzcha, from there He will gather you, and then it says, Misham mikachecha, and from there He will take you. Seems extra. Could have just said He'll take you. V'yesh lomar, you can answer, he says, it says in Masechet Megillah, Tet Zayin Amud Aleph, Ki nafol tipol lefanav. The pasuk in Megillat Esther, the story of Purim, the story of Esther over there, if you're familiar with it, it says over there that after Haman was embarrassed publicly, where he had to carry the chariot of the king upon which Mordechai was being praised upon through the city, he comes home, he tells his family what happened, and his supporters and his family tell him, if that's what happened, and if he's Jewish, right? Here's the whole pasuk. The whole verse says like this. The pasuk is 6:13 in Megillat Esther. Vaseper Haman lezera shishto ulchol ohavav et kol asher karahu. And Haman explained to Zeresh, his wife, and to all those who love him, his supporters, everything that happened to him that day, that embarrassing day. They said to him, Chachamav, his wise ones, his advisors said to him, Zeresh shishto, and also his wife said to him, if Mordechai is a Jew, if he's from the seed of the Jews, and now that you've started to fall before him, you won't be able to overcome him, because you will fall. Fall, you will fall. Double language. Fall, you will fall before him. The Gemara says over there, two mentionings of falling were repeated in this verse. Why? What do I need it? Yehuda says, it teaches you the following. It teaches you that his advisors told him the following. Umazo, this nation, the Jewish nation, Meshula le'afar. They are compared in their Torah by their God to earth, to dirt, to dust of the ground. Afar. But they're also compared to the stars, right? This is the promises that Hashem gave to Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, that the children will be like the dust of the earth, as well as they'll be like the stars of the sky. They're compared to these two extremes, the bottom-most thing and the highest-most thing. Why? Kishehem yordin, because when they descend, when they go below their expected level, they don't follow the ways of God. Yordim adafar, they go really low, to the lowest possible level, down to the dirt. Ukshem olin, but when they elevate, when they do God's will, olin lerakia, they go so high, all the way up to the firmaments of the sky, up to the stars. That's the extreme power of the Jews. They can be the best people in the world or the worst people in the world. So that's before we get there, that is the explanation of the double falling. Right? Nafol tipol, describing the Jewish people in that verse, means that when they fall downwards, they fall all the way downwards. When they fall, so to speak, upwards, they go all the way upwards. Also says in Masech Berachot a similar idea. Daf Daled Bet, it says over there it talks about a certain pasuk, a verse in the prophet Amos. I'll read you the pasuk. It says, "V'nafla lo tosif kum betulat Israel." That when it falls, when the nation of Israel falls, they will no longer be able to get up. But the Gemara explains that verse to mean the following, right? If you want to look at that verse is in Amos Perek Hey pasuk Bet 5:2. The Gemara over there says, "Nafla." That if Israel falls from its high elevated state and it sins and it falls, chas v'shalom, ad ledarga nemucha biyoter, v'lo tosif lenpol od. What it means when it says the next verse over there says next words in the verse say lo tosif, no longer, it won't be any more, which means once they fall, they won't fall anymore. There's a limit how much they can fall. Lo tosif lenpol od. They won't fall further, to the point where of no return, to the point where there's no hope. We'll never get to that point. Why? Because the next word in the verse says, kum, rise. It will rise. Betlet Israel, the nation of Israel, basically. So the concept that Zera Shimshon is trying to prove with these two sources is that when Am Yisrael unfortunately falls based on making the mistakes and not following God's will, which has happened throughout history and still happens in many ways today, the nation will have to fall based on the justice that God designed into the world. There's midat hadin, there's punishment. They will have to fall and suffer to a point. But there is a point so far low that once they finally hit it, it's like a springboard. They bounce off of it. Once they reach a certain low level, they will not go any further. From there, they for sure are guaranteed to go up. And sometimes they need that potential energy to increase as they fall in order to have a higher jump up. This is actually a big topic, a big theme throughout all of life, really. Almost anywhere you can find this idea. It's one of the deep ingrained ideas that God designed the world with, that before the deepest darkness, before the lowest point, right when you get to that lowest point of no return, there's a bounce and you start flying up. You need to get to that deepest, darkest point in order to bounce out of it and reach new heights you never thought of before. A few examples I give you. Famously, Am Yisrael, when they were enslaved by the Egyptians, it says over there that they reached the 49th level of Tum'ah. 49th is the second to last level, right? 49th level of impurity. Once they reach level 50, there's no going back, right? The Mukabbalim speak about this, the Gemara, many places. And that's why God had to hurry up and hastily take them out of Egypt. Right? There's a lot of things over there about the 10th plague, the plague of the firstborn that happened very, very quickly. And right after that, God had to pull them out very quick. And that's why we have matzah, because we didn't have time for the bread, for the dough to fully rise to bread, and it was just matzah cakes and etc., etc. The point is, they had to reach the lowest point possible, 49. And then from there, they bounced up to the highest level they could have never imagined. They all became prophets. They're walking down the Sea of Reeds of the Yam Suf. They saw amazing miracles over there, says the Gemara, things that the prophet Yecheskel didn't see. All the people, even the shfachot, even the women, says the Gemara over there, the maidservants over there saw prophecies at the splitting of the sea that the future prophet Yechezkel would never have seen. What a jump up from the 49th level to all the way up to that high level. Not only that, a few months later they were at Mount Sinai, seeing the glory of God, hearing His voice for the first 2 commandments. You know what kind of level of purity you need for that? So you imagine the huge springboard that they did to reach that. Based on the same idea. And furthermore, another simple example in nature that got ingrained in the world, that we can see this, that before dawn, before the first lights start rising on the eastern horizon every morning, is the darkest point of the night. Here we can't tell because we have street lights, but if you go out in the wilderness somewhere, the darkest point of the night is right before the light comes up. That's the same idea. We got to reach the lowest level before you can springboard up. And I'll give you another example. People are right now very into investing because it's becoming very popular on these different apps, and a lot of young people are into it. Investing, cryptocurrency, stocks, options, these kind of things. And anyone who knows anything about investing, if he studies any charts, he knows that there are what we call support levels. That whenever a price of a commodity or a stock or whatever it is, or a crypto or a coin, reaches a certain level, it may be going down very, very far, but once it reaches a certain level, a certain number, a certain price, where there's a lot of buyers there that are very interested in buying the stock or whatever it is at that price, that's called a support level. So once it reaches that level, oftentimes you'll see a bounce. You'll see it start going up right off of that, like a V. Same idea here. So the Zera Shimshon says, "V'zehu she'amar katuv." This is what it means in our pasuk, the verse in Parashat Nitzavim that he started the question off of, which is again chapter 30, verse 4. It says over there, if you will be pushed all the way to the edges of to the extreme edge of the world. What does that mean? Says the Shimshon. Kaseh haron, means the final bottom edge. That idea means that lowest level that we're talking about. Kaseh haron, the last edge, the furthest place. She'en od makom lehadechecha, that there's no more room to push you away. That's already the farthest you can go. Shekva yerata, that you've already descended ad le'afar, down to the level of the dirt, the afar, like the Gemara said before. Dahainu badyota tochtona, which means the bottommost level. Shlot tosif, that from there on you will no longer linpol od, you will no longer fall more. Meaning again, that's the bottom point. You can't go any further as Am Yisrael. From there you're going to start going up. That's the rule that got put into the world for Am Yisrael. And that's why it says in the verse, Misham davka yikabetzcha. From there, from that point, Misham, right? His question was on the word Misham. What do I need the word Misham? Specifying a certain place. Misham means from there. Why do I need the pasuk to tell me a specific place? Because Zera Shimshon is saying that the idea that the verse is trying to teach you, that there is a specific place, a very specific place where there is an energy to bounce up. There was a help from Shemayim to pull you back up. That very place he's talking about is that most bottom place that you could reach. That's what Misham is talking about. And from there, the Misham, for sure, that's where Hashem is going to gather you and start bringing you up. That's what the verse in Amos means when it says, rise up, Israel. Because it is that dissension into the lowest level which is the reason and the cause of the bounce up to the highest level. It says further over here that since Am Yisrael, why are we suffering in this last exile? The last one is the Roman exile. The Romans were the ones to destroy the second temple, and that generation suffered. Why? Because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. This is a big topic that we're talking about actually in the book and in the lectures that I mentioned earlier, chapter 6 and 7, Bakamsa, other things over there. Very deep stuff over there. But the Gemara says, that the main reason, one of the reasons I should say, for the destruction of the second temple was because of baseless hatred. The Jewish people were divided from each other. They weren't one unit. And it's impossible for us to be redeemed until there is peace between us. As it says in another verse, in Hosea the prophet, chapter 4, Pasuk Yud Zayin, it says, a very poetic verse, it says, Chavur atzabim Ephraim hanachlo. And the pshat, the simple understanding of that verse is that Ephraim, which is one of the tribes of Israel, but that term is being used in this verse to refer to all Am Yisrael, that Ephraim is chavur, attached to atzabim, to images, meaning idol worshipping. If Chas v'Shalom Israel is doing idol worshipping, like it was at the time of this prophet, hanachlo, leave him alone. Rashi explains over there, it means let him be. There's no hope in him. There's no point in rebuking him. No point of trying to help him. He's lost. However, the Zera Shimshon is making a drasha out of this pasuk, and he wants to read it the following way: Havur atzabim, that if Am Yisrael is chavur, attached from the word chibur. Chibur means attached. If Am Yisrael is attached within each other, when they have unification amongst each other, then atzabim, even if they're doing terrible sins, chas v'shalom, like idol worshipping, atzabim's images, if they're doing that, nevertheless, hanachlo, they will be left alone, meaning they won't be destroyed. They won't be destroyed because they have this chut of unity, which is very, very powerful. It's what God is looking for. Uchtiv, and it says further in another place there as well, in Hosea 10:2, and it says, Halak libam ata yeshamu. If their hearts are divided, then they will be ashamed. Right? Same idea. And that's why in our original verse that Zera Shimshon starts talking about in Parashat Nitzavim, Devarim 34, where it says, Misham ikabetzcha, from there God will gather you. It means, Yevarech otcha b'shalom, God will bless you with peace there. V'tayu kulchem mekubatzim ke'ish echad, you're all going to be gathered together like one unit. Umezeh kibbutz v'shalom, from this peace and this tranquility and this brotherhood, yikachecha, then God will take you, mina galut, out of the exile. That's why he repeats, it says yikachecha, which is again, one of the questions was, why does it say in the pasuk, misham ikabetzcha umisham yikachecha? From there he will gather you, from there he will take you. He's saying it means that from there he will gather you, means from there he will unite you. You will become united. You will have unity again. And because of that, then ikachecha, God will take you out. You will have the proper merit to be taken out of the exile and healed from the exile finally. He says further over here, he brings a midrash in Shemot Rabbah. Al pasuk, when it says over there, Moshe haya ro'eh. Moshe was a shepherd. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says about this in the midrash, right? God spoke to Moshe, he first revealed himself to Moshe Rabbeinu through the burning bush, the Sineh. And Rabbi Eliezer says, just like the burning bush is the lowest of all the trees, so it's a low tree, very low to the ground. So too, the Jewish people came down to Egypt, shafal, meaning in a low state, bent over, so to speak. That's why that's why God revealed himself in Egypt through the plagues and the miracles and redeemed them from there, because the Jews were in a subjugated situation. This is questionable, says the Zera Shimshon. What's the problem here? What's the reason for this? Why is it that just because Am Yisrael were subjugated, God decided to redeem them from there in Egypt? Based on what we said, he says, based on what we said so far, we can understand it. That since they were so subjugated, so taken advantage of in Egypt, that's why they needed to be taken out immediately. Same concept as before. Since they reached such a low level of subjugation, low level on that chart, the lowest possible level, that's why the principle of the bounce took place, and that's where God stepped in and took them out. Based on this, we can understand something further, says Zera Shimshon, another chidush. He says, he brings the pasuk in Tehillim, Ayin Zayin, Tet Zayin, 77:16. Says the following: Ga'alta bizroa amecha, you have redeemed your nation, God, with your arm. The yesh lekdakdik, because if we're precise here, the bizroa mashma shegalam mikoach hadin. If the verse says he took them out with his arm, that hints at the power, the attribute of midat hadin, judgment. Why is that so? Because the arm, specifically the left arm, left hand, in the deeper wisdom, correlates to midat hadin, judgment, opposite of the right arm, which is chesed, giving, beyond the letter of the law. Right? Chesed means I give to you endlessly because I just want to, even though you may not deserve it, even though you may be terrible, I still give you. That's chesed. Din is no. Din means law. The word din also means law. It means letter of the law. You only get if you deserve, and exactly what you deserve and no more. And if you don't deserve, you get punished. That's what din means, the left hand. And God, He has both of these attributes. These are two of the 10 emanations through which God runs the world, 10 sefirot. So, based on this, He says, we understand from here that God must have used His power of din, the left arm, to take out Am Yisrael, based on the verse in Tehillim here, 77:16, where it says, Ga'alta bizra amecha. You have redeemed them with your left arm. Right? So what's the connection with that? With the end of that same verse, says Zera Shimshon, where it says over there, Bnei Yaakov Yosef Sela. The sons of Yaakov and Yosef you took out. What's the connection with the first part of the verse? Talks about the left power with Yaakov and Yosef at the end of the verse. Yosef. Also, at the end of the verse where it says the sons of Yaakov and Yosef, isn't that extra? You could have just said Bnei Yaakov, the sons of Yaakov, because Yosef was, at the end of the day, a son of Yaakov. So if you say the sons of Yaakov, Yosef is included in there. So why do you have to go ahead and write Yosef as well? It seems extra. You can answer based on what the Kabbalists write. He says over here, brings a source from the Yalkut Chadash. He says, she'illule she'shaltu השבטים על יוסף קודם שירד למצרים היו ישראל משוקעים שם לעולם. אבל על ידי ששלטו השבטים ביוסף תחילה ואחר כך למלך על מצרים נמצא שהמצריים היו עבדים לכל ישראל. He says that if the brothers, Yosef's brothers, the other tribes, didn't first overtake Yosef and rule him, so to speak, right? What did they do? They took him, they threw him in the pit, they basically made him a slave at that moment. If they didn't make him a slave to them first, then the Jewish people would have had a much worse time in Egypt. Why? What's the logic? He's saying the brothers made Yosef their slave, and they sold him like a slave. Then Yosef eventually became king of Egypt, viceroy, whatever, basically acting king of Egypt, and he enslaved all of the people in Egypt, right? Because it says over there in the verses that the famine became so bad that, and they all came to Yosef, selling all their assets to him, and eventually they had no more assets to sell to get food from Yosef, and then Yosef said, okay, so then I'm going to buy your bodies, you're my property now, you're all my slaves, and then I'll give you food. And that's what he did. So he owned all the people, they were all slaves to Yosef. But Yosef was a slave to his brothers. So by extension, all of Egypt were slaves to all of Am Yisrael, to all the brothers. And from them came the Am Yisrael, because what happens is, in the laws of slaves, that if it's an Ebed Kanaani, a non-Jewish slave, which the Egyptians were non-Jewish, it's inherited from father to son, like other properties, like movable property or real estate property is inherited from father to son. Same thing here. So all the many years later that the Jews came down to Egypt, they were all the descendants of the tribes. They came down to Egypt and they lived in Egypt. They were technically the owners, by extension, of all the Egyptians there. They were the real masters. And that's why through that power they were able to get redeemed eventually. But if that didn't happen, he says, if Yosef was never overruled and taken by his brothers and sold as a slave, then Am Yisrael, then the Egyptians later would not have been slaves to all of Am Yisrael, only to Yosef. But that's not enough, because it was the rest of them were there as well. The rest of the tribes and their descendants were there as well. So they would have only been slaves to Yosef, not to the other tribes. And because of that, those other tribes, or maybe even Yosef's children, would have all been stuck in Egypt forever. They wouldn't have the proper power in Shamayim to be taken out. So what happened was, through this whole, tragic, it seems tragic that the brothers overtook Yosef, but really it was a positive thing. That was the key to what allowed the Jews to eventually be redeemed from Egypt all those many years later. That is the idea he's teaching here. Based on that, we can understand that verse in Tehillim that he asked the question on, where it says over there, God, you redeemed with your arm. What that means, with the power of the deen, with the left arm. Zroa means left arm, means arm, but here it means deen, it means the left arm. And deen also means the law. The law is the halakha, which means God was able to redeem the future Jewish people from Egypt based on a certain law, certain deen, a certain halakha. Which halakha is that? This famous halakhic principle that whatever the slave acquires, automatically the owner acquired, meaning it's the owner's. So for example, if a Jewish owner has a Canaanite slave, and the slave goes and finds a diamond on the street, automatically it doesn't, it's not owned by the slave. The slave doesn't have the right to own. Automatically that diamond is owned by his owner. And that principle is applied here. That since the brothers owned Yosef, since they made him a slave, then Yosef, when he made all of Egypt's slaves, that means he acquired this, right? Yosef acquired the Egyptians, but by definition, based on this principle, this halakha, this deen, really who acquired them? The brothers. And all of Am Yisrael, eventually, their descendants, acquired the Egyptians. And therefore, they were really the masters of the Egyptians. And that's why they were able to get eventually redeemed. And that's why the end of the verse, the same verse, Tehillim 77:16, it says, Bnei Yaakov v'Yosef. God, who did you redeem? The sons of Yaakov and Yosef. Because it was the whole fact that Bnei Yaakov, sons of Yaakov, which means all the tribes excluding Yosef, the other tribes, that's Bnei Yaakov. And Yosef, because of their interaction, that they made him a slave, that's why God was able to use his halakha to the deen, the left arm, and pull out Am Yisrael. That is the chidush it says here. בשביל השנאה שהיה ביניהם, ומתוך כך מכרו לעבד. ואם תאמר, if you want to say, ומה צורך היה ששלטו אחיו עליו ושילך שם לעבד, if you want to say, what was the whole point of the brothers making Yosef a slave and sending him to Egypt? והלא אפילו אם היה הולך שם בעצמו, meaning why do you need that step? Couldn't you say that if Yosef ended up in Egypt some other way without being a slave, without being sold by his brothers as a slave, without that first step, right? If Yosef got to Egypt somehow, b'li shem ebed, without the title of a slave, v'haya na'aseh melech sham ala Mitzrayim, and he would become the king there in Egypt some other way, God could have devised it another way. Hayu Mitzrayim kenuim lo le'awadim. Still, when he became the king, he would have made the Egyptians his slaves, like what happened. Ve'yu Mitzrayim awadim lechol bnei Yosef, and then the Egyptians would be slaves to all the sons of Yosef. Why do they have to be slaves to all of Am Yisrael? And why can't it have just been just the sons of Yosef? You can answer, if that happened, then all the other brothers and their children, right, the other 10, 11 brothers, and their children would be on a lower level than Yosef. They would have to subjugate themselves to Yosef, because Yosef would be the ultimate king, and there wouldn't be equality amongst Yosef's children and the other tribes' children. And we didn't want that. And because of that, he says, it had to be this specific way where they first, those 10 brothers, 11 brothers, well, really it was 10, Binyamin wasn't there. Those 10 brothers first made Yosef a slave, as we explained, then Yosef made the Egyptian slaves. You needed that continuation in order for the eventual, all Am Yisrael, all the brothers, all 11 of them, 12 of them, to be on an even playing field. And that's what it says over here. Just read it, let's finish it off. להוציאם לחירות, ולכן מתחילה שלטו החייב עליו, ואחר כך שלט הוא על המצרים, ובזה בני יעקב ויוסף סלע. Right, basically exactly how we explained Zera Shimshon. Baruch Hashem, we're almost there at Parashat Nitzavim. We have about a few parashiyot for this year. We have Vayelech, Ha'azinu and Vezot Beracha. I'm gonna have to probably do Vezot Beracha early because Vezot Beracha always comes out on Simchat Torah, and it's the same week as Bereshit. It's very difficult because you have only a few days to do Bereshit. It's such a shame because Bereshit is such a fundamental parasha, and since the holiday comes in the middle of the week, you only have a few days left before Shabbat where we do Bereshit. So I'm thinking I'm going to do that one early, and then after that I'm going to B'ezrat Hashem do a new Mefaresh, a new Chacham explaining a different one I should say, explaining the Torah for the next coming year. B'ezrat Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.